I see a lot about Vivaldi, and I think the main thing I see that prevents at least more of the hardcore people in the privacy community from hopping on is the source code situation. So I wanted to get more insight into that because, as far last I read, Vivaldi is source available.
Yeah, I mean the way it works is so basically we're Chromium based. So any changes to the Chromium code we share. So everything on the C++ side we are sharing. Then when it comes to the web-based interface, there isn't an open license to use that. We have been discussing what to do with that because in some ways we'd like to be as open as possible, and we actually in some ways even encourage people to make changes to the browser and share their creations. And people are doing that. But I think what you have there, you have the code base, which is C++, and you can go and audit it and have a look at it. At the same time, you can do the same with the HTML code because the UI, so all the code is readable, but you can't take it and create a competitor. And it's a question of,
It's
okay,
a
should
licensing
we
thing.
do that? It's a licensing thing more than anything else. Anyone can have a look at it, and we are not going to be kind of, if someone wants to do hacks on the code and the like, they can go and do that, and they do primarily on the user interface code, which is where I would expect people to want to do changes. It's actually easier because it's JavaScript and CSS and HTML. It's easy to go and do those changes, and people do, and you find a number of these mods listed in our forums where people are discussing them. So we have a lot of discussions with users on kind of and a lot of active users doing changes and discussing with us. But again, we haven't provided the license. We are always having discussions on it. Is there a way we could do that where we would feel comfortable? Um, so far we haven't found a way, but it's it's coming back because there's a lot of people inside the company that would like to go there.
Right. And so for someone who's listening to this podcast and, they are, a staunch open source advocate and they want to use Vivaldi, but they can't get over the fact that it's not, I guess, by formal definition, open source. I guess what would you say to them? Because I'm not quite that staunch on the open source boat. I do use some proprietary software. If I have two things and one's open source and they're equivalent more or less in the feature side of things, I'm always going to pick the open source option. But I also like to remember that open source is all about mainly transparency more than anything. And if you're still supplying the source code, I don't see the privacy or security issue with that necessarily. So I guess what are your personal thoughts and what would you say to someone who's like, I can't use Vivaldi because it's not technically open source?
Yeah, I think again, like you said, you can look at the code. You can have a look at any parts of the code. It's all there, and I think that's kind of should be enough for most users. There will be a group of people that will not accept us, and I think it's unfortunate because I do feel that those are the users that probably would feel most at home in Vivaldi in many ways. I mean, we have a very strong support on Linux, so my feeling is that there is a strong kind of tie between us and the Linux community, and a lot of us are Linux fans and the like. And I think there's most Linux users would welcome us, but there's a group of people that because we don't have the right license, then they won't accept us. But then there is the fact that there is the second argument, by the way, and we know about that argument as well. So if we were to open source, there would still be the argument, but you're Chromium.
Yep. It's hard to please everyone in the privacy world, which I'm sure you
So
know.
So it's kind of like we wouldn't get everyone even if we were to provide a license. So it's difficult, but I mean, I think people that know us and that have looked into what we are doing and they like what we are doing. And again, I mean, I think a lot of our users, they have this thinking, okay, we trust Vivaldi, but we also verify. And I think that's really what I recommend people to do in general uh, when it comes to any company, whether it's open source or not. Because I mean, you look at open source companies, and they can do bad things just like anyone else. So it's a question of basically trust but verify. And I think that's what you find our users are doing. They like what we're doing, but they will still put on sniffers on the communication to verify that what we are saying about communication with our servers and the like is true.
Right. And it's not hard to disprove claims like we only collect the number
Sure.
of users. That's a very easy thing for anyone who downloads Vivaldi to go ahead and verify.
Basically, so I think, I mean, that's what people do. They have a look at how we communicate and the like.
Right.